Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell here, and today I have some major updates for you on two big government benefits. The first one being the disability benefit that's been long promised by the federal government for the past 2 years, as well as the newer Cost of Living Relief Act benefit, which is a doubling of the GST credit. We have updates on both of these. That's exactly what we're going to get into right now. We'll start with the disability benefit, and then we'll get into the GST Cost of Living Relief Act after that, and I'll update you on where we are on that front. So starting with the disability benefit, we've got a tweet here from Carla Qualtrough, who is the Liberal minister responsible for bringing this act forward, and she says that the Conservatives just blocked a motion to send Bill C-22, the Canada Disability Benefit Act, to committee. If they do not want this bill to move forward and they do not want this benefit to be created as quickly as possible, they should tell Canadians why. You might already know that in the legislative process, first you need to go through first and second reading in the House of Commons, and you have to get a positive vote on that to get it sent to committee, where it will be further discussed and any changes will be recommended at that point and then brought back to the House of Commons for them to vote on it a third time. But as of this tweet, it seems that this bill has not moved forward as maybe she expected. But this hasn't gone in the traditional path. Normally we'd have first reading and then second reading, and then we'd have a vote where all members of parliament actually are able to give their voice here to decide whether or not this goes to committee and gets closer to being completed. However, this was a little bit different. We actually saw a Green Party member of parliament just propose a motion to skip all of that voting and send the bill directly to committee instead of having to wait for it to come back up in the House of Commons again.
There have been consultations amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion. The motion for second reading of Bill C-22 be deemed adopted on division, deemed read a second time, and referred to the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. No, I'm afraid we don't have unanimous consent on that.
So this Green member of parliament said to the Speaker of the House, if you ask everybody, we're all going to say yes, that we want this to move on to the committee already. So the Speaker of the House of Commons asks everyone in the room, and there's at least one nay, so that motion is deemed to have not passed. There have been many different critics of the bill, and myself on the channel has been one as well, saying, hey, there's not actually a lot in this bill. You might remember that the bill that we've talked about for the disability benefit, it's empty of any information about how much people will be getting, how they will be getting it, how they're deemed qualified. So it's kind of understandable that some people would vote against this, saying, hey, well, we're not voting on anything here. There's no information. Instead, the government wants to sort of change these details after it's already voted through by parliamentarians. And the same concerns were echoed in a recent CBC interview with Carla Qualtrough about this very thing. Let me show you some clips here where they actually will eventually reveal roughly when people could see this benefit getting through if it's voted through the House of Commons here in the next number of months, as well as the amount that individuals with disabilities could actually receive.
We have heard from a number of advocates as well as members of the opposition who are worried about the lack of detail in this bill. What you're asking basically is for people to be confident that it will in fact do what you say the intention is, but we don't have very many details. We don't know how much people are going to get. We don't know if it's going to require a clawback. We don't know if it'll be indexed to inflation as it is right now versus last year's. Why aren't some of those more salient points addressed in the legislation?
Well, let me frame it a little bit for you. So we've said it's going to be a monthly benefit directly paid into the pockets of Canadians. So this is not a provincial transfer, for example. It's going to be modeled after the GIS, so it's income supplement. It's meant to lift people out of poverty, so to get people to that, $20,000, $25,000 mark, depending on where you are in the country. So it's going to have to be substantive enough, and potentially around the GIS type level to ensure that people actually are lifted out of poverty. We don't know exactly how, the exact amount, and I guess what I can assure you is, of course, through the regulatory process, through our commitment to continuing to work with the disability community, we wanted to get this bill into law, put a stake in the ground, start negotiating with provinces. And, I've been very clear in terms of red lines with the provinces that we are not going to be in a position where anyone is no better off, because this isn't a transfer. This isn't replacement income. This is supplemental income. We cannot have anything clawed back. We can't have any benefit cut off. I don't want someone in BC losing a transit transit passed because now they're making too much money, and the BC government taking away the transit. Could be any province. They just like to use my own so I don't get in trouble with other provinces. But the point is that this is not the end of discussions. This is in some ways the beginning of working and continuing to work on the details, and there will be a very public process around the regulations to put those very, specific details that you're talking about into regulation, and within the broader context of the complexities of the provincial and territory systems.
So there's a lot to break down there, but we're going to simplify it to two main points that were made here and what those points reveal. The first one is the main difficulty with the reason why there's not a lot of detail inside of this legislation, or at least the reason Carla Qualtrough is giving, as well as the amount that she suggested. She sort of linked it to being similar to the GIS. We're going to get into exactly how much this means that the disability benefit could be. But first, let's talk about the main difficulty with this bill. Carla Qualtrough says, hey, every single individual province is different with the way that they handle their disability benefits and their different programs, and she says it's very challenging to negotiate with each individual province to make sure that once you get this federal disability benefit, you won't have any sort of services or any provincial benefits clawed back. They won't view this federal benefit as income, because a lot of these benefits on the provincial level, well, you have to show that you have below a certain income level in order to qualify for it, and as soon as you pass that level, you no longer get that funding. So Carla Qualtrough is saying we need to make sure that this is sort of loose legislation to make sure that we can make the changes to make sure nobody has these provincial clawbacks. That's the first point. The second point is how much you could receive from this disability benefit when it actually passes through, and she says that it's going to be modeled against the GIS, which is the Guaranteed Income Supplement, and that this new disability benefit is only really meant to bring people up to just above the poverty line for folks that are just below it currently. So you can see this amount here. This is what the GIS is currently, saying that if you're a single and your income is less than $20,000 per year, then the maximum amount that you could get per month is just under $1,000. And Carla Qualtrough says that this is the closest thing to where they're planning on modeling the disability benefit after. So the next question is, even if this passes through the House of Commons, as many might expect it will, when will people actually see this money hitting their pockets? This is something that people have been waiting for quite a long time, actually since 2020. This is the 2020 speech from the throne, which is the time where at the beginning of a new session of Parliament, the Prime Minister stands up and says, these are the government's priorities for the year. And you can see here, right, inside of the 2020 speech, a new Canadian disability benefit modeled after the GIS. This is inside of their 2020 priorities, and it's now getting closer to the end of 2022. So people have been waiting quite a while, but actually inside of this very same interview, it seems Carla Qualtrough reveals when people could expect to see this actually hit their wallets.
And so how long do you anticipate that regulation establishment process will take? And I'll frame it for you. Why I'm asking is because there are a number of people who would be watching tonight wondering when they might be receiving this benefit, whatever it ends up being. And that timeline is unclear to me right now.
Well, you can anticipate a regulatory process that would go, around 12 months after the establishment in law of this benefit. Of course, we're trying to do as much pre-work as we can, get feedback on the details that you're talking about. I'm working with provinces. I'm meeting all the time with my provincial and territorial counterparts to get their commitment to exempt this from when they calculate entitlement to provincial benefits, for example. They're not used to working with the federal government in this space. We've never had a federal government kind of jump into the disability support world like we're doing. So it's a learning curve, but there's a few things that I will not compromise on, and one of those is clawbacks.
So because this bill didn't pass that Green Party motion, it will likely have to go to a formal second reading and a formal vote on that second reading, at which point that formal vote will likely be voted in favor of, because we'll have the Liberals and the NDPs and probably the Bloc Québécois voting in favor of it as well. The Conservatives may not. It seems like they're the ones that are taking most issue with this, although we have seen issues from the Bloc Québécois and the NDP who are all saying, hey, there's no details in this blank bill. It's a blank canvas, blank slate. Why would we vote on this? So it's not a sure thing that it will pass through that second reading vote immediately without any changes made. But if it does, even if it does, That means that we would have to wait another year, Carla Qualtrough is saying here, for the regulations, all of these details to be put into place. Another full year before any benefit could go out. And again, she's saying that this is because of the challenge of working with the individual provinces, where the federal government hasn't typically intervened when it comes to provincial disability benefits. And now for the Cost of Living Relief Act. You might remember that this bill was split up into two different sections, Bill C-30 and Bill C-31. The 31 is about the dental care support for children 12 and under, the direct payments to families for that. That hasn't moved that much as of yet, but what has moved is the GST tax rebate, the doubling of that rebate for 6 months. That has actually moved forward, much in a similar way to how the Green Party wanted the disability benefit to move through, to sort of skip a couple steps. You can see here we're looking at the motions from yesterday's House of Commons session, and right here the last one is by unanimous consent, the motion for the second reading of Bill C-30, which is the GST rebate, be adopted on division and read the second time and then immediately referred to the Committee on Finance. So they skipped some reading steps and they said, hey, you know what, we all agree on this, unanimous consent, everyone voted in favor of this in the House of Commons, we just want to push this to the Finance Committee. So we're through first reading, through second reading, and now the Finance Committee will take a look at it. They'll make any sort of recommendations that they might have if they want to make a change. If there are no recommendations, it'll come right back to the House of Commons and they'll vote on it again. And at that point, it will receive royal assent and become a reality. And come January 1st, 2023, I believe, is when it's set to take effect. You will see that doubling of the GST rebate. It seems like all parties are on board for this, so it's very likely this is going through. But now, as a quick summary for the disability benefit, we could see that amount being around $1,000 as long as your income is below that sort of $25,000 mark. This is our best guess as of now. But in terms of the timeline for when you could receive this, well, in a best case scenario, if this passes the House of Commons through the House of Commons very quickly in the coming month, well, you'd still have to wait another 12 months, as Carla Qualtrough said, because they need to work on top of the legislation to create the regulations. All of those minor details, they're going to fill in the blanks after the fact. And if this bill gets voted through, it's essentially the House of Commons saying, hey, government, we trust you to fill in these blanks. We trust you're going to do a good job with it. You're going to negotiate with the provinces to make this all work. If that happens, we could see this happening by the beginning of 2024. Not to be the bearer of bad news for folks who have been waiting for this for a long time. But that's about it for the updates. Obviously, a lot going on here, and I'm curious what you think about it. Let me know in the comment section below. I read every single one and try to get to as many as I possibly can. Do you think that things are likely to go the way you expect, or do you think that maybe things are going to get jammed up even more? Let me know. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe, because I'm going to keep on bringing you all of these updates so you know exactly what is going on here in Canadian politics, with Canadians and their money, and all of the important things that you need to know about. But with all that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.